Hello my fellow friends and followers, it's me, Retromania, and in today's video we are talking about the history of the PlayStation Vita from the very beginning all until today. Sony's codename for the PlayStation Vita was the NGP, Next Generation Portable. Leaks talked about Sony making private meetings at Sony Computer Entertainment headquarters in Aoyama, Tokyo during mid-September 2010. During those meetings, Sony allegedly showed the NGP aka PlayStation Vita eternally to some higher-ups. Shortly after, reports of a development kit had been already reported to be already shipped to numerous first-party and third-party developers to develop games for the system. A report of the famous Mortal Kombat executive producer Sean Himmerich confirmed that yes, they did get developer kits of the NGP around that period to start developing games for the system. In November 2010, Senior Vice President of Electronic Arts Patrick Soderlund did confirm that yes, he has seen the Next Generation Portable NGP. In the same month, VG247 released a picture of an early prototype version of the NGP. On the picture, the NGP had a PSP Go-like side-screen design, along with two analog sticks and two cameras and a microphone. Sony mentioned that they moved away from this early prototype design because of overheating issues. I find it interesting that the PlayStation Vita was actually planned to be more similar in design to a PSP Go. I never knew that until I started make my deep research. Did you know that? If you did or didn't, write me down below if you did or didn't, and let's move on. Sony obviously denied all rumors of a Sony PSP successor in 2010 while still commenting on the fact that they are working on a quote-unquote future hardware. Sony's CEO Kazuo Hirai stated that they used the words future hardware to imply that the PlayStation Vita had a back and a front touchscreen. Kazuo Hirai stated that they wanted to make a control interface with traditional buttons and a joystick, but also a modern control interface to catch the smartphone audience. In my honest opinion, this mindset is more unhealthy than healthy. The console and handheld audience is far separated from the smartphone audience. Appealing to a new audience isn't necessarily bad, but the extra hardware functionalities like the back touchscreen, the front touchscreen, gyroscope to 2 million cameras just increase the production value, the production cost of the system and the overall final MSRP of the system. Now playing the Vita in 2022, soon 2023, makes me appreciate all the functionalities if the games ever use them. They are amazing if they are used right. Tearaway was a great game to show off what the PlayStation Vita can actually do, but let's move on. The system was officially announced by Sony on January 27, 2011 on the PlayStation meeting press conference held by the company in Japan. The system, known as the NGP, Next Generation Portable, was announced to be a portable device aimed to have PlayStation 3 graphics on the go, like the PSP was aimed to be a portable device to have PlayStation 2 graphics on the go. However, I think the problem was that the game development got more and more expensive and more time consuming. What worked for the PSP PlayStation Portable clearly didn't work for the PlayStation Vita. David Combes later clarified that the NGP wouldn't be as powerful as a PlayStation 3, but close enough, really close. We should imagine it like a between stage of a PlayStation 2 to a PlayStation 3, something like a PlayStation 2.5 remix. May your PlayStation Vita be your guide and key. Further details were announced at Game Developer Conference in 2011, including that Sony would drop the PSP UMD disc format in favor of smaller cartridges of 2GB and 4GB size variants. This was, in my opinion, the right thing to do. They don't create sound noise like a disc reader, and the smaller cartridge format is better for portability. On June 6, 2011, at E3 2011, Sony announced that the device would be officially called the PlayStation Vita with the famous words, "Vita means life." Sony confirmed that despite the Japanese earthquake in 2011 called the Tohoku earthquake, release date of the live station would not be delayed. It will be 2011 in Japan and February 2012 worldwide. Finally, in December 17, 2011, the PlayStation Vita launched in Japan and in February 22, 2012 worldwide. The launch price of the system was $249.99 USD in America and €249.99 in Europe. The price was a huge pill to swallow, especially because it didn't include the Sony proprietary memory card, what was necessary to save your games and to download games online. The Nintendo 3DS game cartridges would save game files on the cartridge itself. Sadly, that wasn't the case for the PlayStation Vita. On top of that, Nintendo would include also a 2GB and later even 4GB SD card for each Nintendo 3DS purchase, what the Vita would not do. Now let's take a look at the launch lineup of the PlayStation Vita. Holy moly, what is that? This is by far the most impressive launch lineup I have ever seen. Hot Shots Golf, Uncharted: The Golden Abyss, Wipeout 2048, Rayman Origins, Touch My Katamari, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Virtual Tennis 4. Just a second, guys. Okay, I think we are fine. Okay, let's move on. Credit where credit's due, Sony outdone themselves with this crazy launch lineup. The Vita had a really strong launch, but over time numbers went down. In Japan, the Vita sold over 300,000 units in the first week. Sadly, shortly after, the number shrunk down to 78%, what it's around 73,000 units sold in the second week. And then it settled down into about 12,000 units sold per week every single following week. Similarly, in America it sold 200,000 units in the first month, before shrinking down into amount of about 50,000 units a month. 1.2 million units were reported to be sold as of February 26, 2012. The Vita sold over 4 million units in the first 10 months of its launch. Because the system underperformed in 2012, big third-party companies like Ubisoft, Activision started to reduce or eliminate their support for the system, especially in the West. Monster Hunter boosted the sale numbers of the PSP and would most likely do the same to the PS Vita. Sadly, Capcom decided to switch to the 3DS because of the low sale numbers of the PS Vita. Shahid Ahmad, Sony's director of strategy content, have a new strategy how to approach software. Ahmad approached smaller AA and indie developers to help out the PlayStation Vita. The cheaper development and porting cost made it easier for smaller developers to publish their games on the PlayStation Vita. Sony later translated the game Tales of Hearts R and released it in Europe and America because it was the #1 game people voted for a Western release. Later on in 2013, we would also get Tearaway, Killzone Mercenary and Rayman Legends. Both the PlayStation Vita and the 3DS were one of the best-selling systems in Japan. You see, Japan prefers handheld gaming over home consoles, and this was definitely a market Sony will dive deep into. The system received many JRPG support from third party, games like Final Fantasy X and X-2, the Ys games and Atelier games and much more. Sony decided in August 2013 to reduce the price of the PS Vita to $199.99 USD in America and €199.99 in Europe. At the same time, we also got a new PlayStation Vita, the PS Vita 2000 model, what was 20% thinner, 50% lighter, adding 1GB of internal storage and 1 hour of extra battery life. Sadly, the Vita 2000 model also removed the beautiful OLED screen, replacing it with a much inferior, much cheaper LCD option. And the build quality was also much more cheaper, much more plastic-like. Shuhei Yoshida shifted the focus of the PlayStation Vita near the end of 2013 and start of 2014. He mentioned how Sony will develop less first-party exclusives on the PlayStation Vita. Their focus was on making the PlayStation Vita a remote play device. By connecting your PlayStation Vita with your PlayStation 4, you was able to play most of your PlayStation 4 games remotely. Sadly, Sony didn't really focus on remote play on the PlayStation 3, and only few games were supported on the PlayStation 3 remote play to the PlayStation Vita. I wish the lineup was better on the PlayStation 3 because I personally prefer the PlayStation 3 much more than the PlayStation 4. Anyways, in November 14, 2013, Sony released the Sony PlayStation TV in Japan and slightly later in October 14, 2014 in America and in November 14, 2014 in Europe. The launch price was $99.99 USD in America and €99.99 in Europe. This was a killer price if you ask me. Sony wanted to extend their PlayStation ecosystem. The PlayStation TV was a secondary device for anyone who owned a PlayStation Vita or anyone who wanted to play PlayStation Vita games on their TV. Sadly, not all PlayStation Vita games worked on the PlayStation TV. Still, it was a great secondary device for anyone who owned a PlayStation Vita or a PlayStation in general. It was a great device But let's move on. The last major Sony developed title for the PlayStation Vita was Freedom Wars. It sold over 188,000 copies in the first week of the release in Japan. Obviously it sold better in Japan, it was definitely a game what was tailor-made for the Japanese audience. Still, Freedom Wars also catch the hearts of many Western gamers who also love unique, weird and obscure Japanese games. In September 2015, Yoshida stated that Sony had no current plans for a Vita successor, stating that climate it's not healthy for now because of the huge dominance of mobile gaming. I call BS on this one. If that's the case, why did the 3DS sold so well and why is the Nintendo Switch one of the best selling handhelds ever made? I think Sony made some critical mistakes what made the Vita flop. Sadly, they cannot admit those mistakes and try to shift the blame to the smartphone platform. In 2017, Glixel estimated the Vita user base to be around 15 million. On September 20, 2018, Sony announced at Tokyo Game Show 2018 that the Vita would be discontinued in 2019, ending its hardware production. At the time of the announcement, US Gamer estimated that the Vita user base has grown to approximately 16 million units. Production of the Vita hardware officially ended on March 1, 2019. In March 2021, Sony announced that the Vita online storefront would be closing in August 27, 2021, making it impossible to purchase digital goods online. You would still have the quote-unquote luxury to download previously purchased games. This decision was later reversed because of fan backlash. Good job guys, we must fight the good fight. So Sony did backroll their decision, but it's just a question of when, not if, when it comes to the closure of the store. So yeah guys, this was my video about the history of the PlayStation Vita. I love my Vita, I love my system so much, the Vita it's a great system. I think the problem was the launch price of $250 what didn't include a memory card, so the original price of owning a PlayStation Vita wasn't $250 but about $300, what was a bummer considering the prices of the 3DS systems. The 3DS was also a cheaper system, so most people got the 3DS over the Vita. I also think the first party lineup was extremely lacking. Although Sony had an amazing launch lineup, they later dropped the ball and said we will not develop any more games for the system.
Hey, you in this, yes, you in this, and UAA Studios, yes, you, make games for us, yeah, do our job for us, yeah, thank you, yeah.
The Vita was then shifted from a first-party Sony AAA PlayStation 3 graphics on-the-go system to a more niche obscure device housing many unique smaller Japanese gems. I appreciate those type of games, but without a doubt, those games do not sell units, at least not for the big mainstream audience. I think mistakes were made what couldn't be backrolled. Still, the Vita is a great system, and if those unique obscure Japanese gems interest you, this is a great system to own. What do you think about the PlayStation Vita? Do you like it? What do you think about the history of the system? Let me know down below. And with this out of the way, I wish you all a wonderful day. Sayonara my good old friends. Ciao.